If you're a sports fan like we are, you have favorite sports moments. My name is Mike Perkins, and we're coming in hot. All right, fans, we have a great show for you here today. Very excited, of course. Again, my name is Mike Perkins, and to my left is the laser Chuck Lasik, and to my right is Eric Pesolano. We're going to have a show today. We debated about this for quite some time, but we came up with a great idea of having 3 favorite sports moments in our own personal lives, and we really haven't discussed amongst ourselves what each of ours is, so this is going to be kind of news for us. So kind of exciting. I know. Mine really have more to do with some of my younger life. I really feel as a sports fan, the earliest days of your sports watching is in the 9, 10, 11, 12 age range is what really kind of develops your love for sports. So a couple of mine have to do with that time frame, and I'm excited to hear about what you guys have.
Yeah, mine are going to be a little bit more recent.
Mine are too.
I'm no spring.
My team's never won, so it took a while. Mine took a while actually.
Have they won yet?
Yes, basically it took a while, but it took a while, but yes, they finally did win, and So
I can say that none of mine feature my favorite team winning a title. None of them. Neither 3 of them.
Okay, wow. That's interesting.
Okay,
it's more going to be the stories behind why I chose what I chose and why it was important to me.
That's why we're doing this, because we want to hear the stories, and the fans want to hear the stories too.
I will say, I did tell Chuck earlier what my 3 were, but I didn't tell him why.
Yeah,
Okay.
And he wasn't terribly
I guess
impressed.
I'm the odd man out here. So,
I nearly fell asleep, so we'll have to wait and see. So
anyway, we're going to start with our number 3s, and we'll go to our number 2s, and then we'll go to our number 1s. And I'm going to give the lead to Mr. Pesolano to give his number 3.
All right. So my number 3 favorite sports moment of all time. I was in attendance for 2 of my 3, so this is going to be one of the ones I was not in attendance for. But it's the surrounding environment that really made it stick out in my head. It was also a very big sports moment and widely talked about for weeks, if not months after it happened. And it is the 2006 World Cup final between Italy and France. Let me set the scene for you and why this was so memorable for me. First of all, we were on a family vacation when this match took place. We were on a cruise. We were in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on our way down to the Bahamas when this match took place. The cruise ship itself had a 100-foot big screen on the very top deck. And of course, being it a cruise that sailed over international waters, a lot of international passengers. A lot of soccer fans.
Of course.
On the cruise ship.
Of course.
So everybody on the ship, whether they were a sports fan or not, felt like they were on the top deck that afternoon. And the weather wasn't terribly great. It looked like rain was coming. The rain held off for the entire match. Thank goodness. So we all sat on the top deck on our beach chairs next to the pool, watching the match. Started off right out of the gate. Zinedine Zidane scores 7 minutes in. And Italy's down 1-0. I'm Italian. Italy is my second favorite soccer
Hey,
team.
Paisan.
Hey, my second favorite team behind the United States, of course, who has yet to be fortunate enough to advance that far in a World Cup. And Lord knows it may probably not be anytime soon.
definitely.
So watching Italy play was the next best thing. So they're down 1-0. Usually in soccer, you give up that first one. And, you guys have watched soccer matches before. In every soccer match I've ever seen, that first goal is the end of the match. Everybody thinks it's over.
At that level, the defense is so good that they can lock down, they can possess the ball so much and run out so much time that if you get up 1-0, excuse me.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. 1-0, you gotta get that nil down. Exactly.
Especially with a team like Italy, who's not very offensive. Okay, 12 minutes later in the 19th minute, Marco Materazzi ties the game, levels at 1, gets the equalizer. I'll use all the terms for you.
I'm impressed. You know the names.
That's pretty impressive.
Right there.
So he ties the game up. It's 1-1. That was it for regulation. No more goals in full time. So most of the most of the passengers, I'd even go so far as to say all of the passengers were rooting for Italy. Nobody was on the France side. At least nobody was willing to admit they were rooting for France. Match goes to extra time. We hit the 110th minute, and Zinedine Zidane decides to throw his bald head right into the chest of the Italian and gets red carded off. And that is why I say it was talked for months after, was because of that moment. It was his last match as a French national, and he gets red carded off on a headbutt in extra time in the World Cup final. And for a man of his stature in the sport, it was shocking. Everybody had to take a seat on the top deck of the ship and try to process what the heck just happened.
Well, France goes down to 10 players.
They go down to 10 men. So now Italy's got a man advantage, cannot score in extra time, so it goes to penalties to decide the World Cup champion.
I guess this is the one area I have a little bit of a beef with, especially at that level, that it goes to penalties, which are fun to watch. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. But to decide a World Cup champion with penalty kicks?
Yeah, this isn't just like to advance in the tournament, or it's not like a group stage. They don't go to penalties in group stage, but it's not just to simply advance and get some points. The World Cup final is on the line.
I've always
and they
felt
go to
that
penalties.
they should play it out. Just my opinion.
You don't see how.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess
you don't see it in football either. Even though they have ties in the regular season, they don't do that in the playoffs.
Exactly.
They go to penalties in soccer. So they go to penalties. Italy's up 4-3. Their fifth man comes up, and Fabio Grosso just tucks one inside the post, and Italy becomes World Cup champs. And the entire deck jumped up and started screaming and dancing. I didn't realize how many Italians were on this cruise ship. So that's my number.
And you just fit right in, didn't you?
I just fit right in. That's my number 3 favorite moment. And by the way, as soon as Italy hoisted the cup and celebrated and all the confetti came down, it started pouring over the Caribbean, and we were in the rain and had to run inside for cover. It was the strangest experience. That's my number 3 moment of all time.
Awesome. That's obviously a impacting event on your life, and you can still remember it with that much degree. That's pretty impressive.
And
Chuck,
that was the thing. Like, talk about Chuck. I knew just saying 06 World Cup final wasn't going to be great. It was the story behind it, which is what made it great.
Well, yeah, you can remember all the names. I can't even remember who scored and who drove in the winning run for my next one. So
here we go, Chuck. You're on.
Being a long-suffering White Sox fan that I am, and I was debating back and forth about my number 3. There was the Cal State Fullerton winning the 2004 College World Series, and we were at a place, and they had a picture. A film crew came in and took a picture of my son sitting at the, he was 7 years old, sitting at taking a picture of my son at the bar and stuff like that. And I was going back and forth, but actually I'm going to go back to October 26, 2005. The Sox are up 3-0 against the Houston Astros, and I've been a huge White Sox fan since I've been, I think, 6 years old. Long-suffering White Sox fan. Only saw them in the playoffs twice. Until 2005, and saw them sweep Boston, saw the A.J. Pierzynski drop third strike against the beloved Angel fans here, and A.J., I'll take this to my grave, is the smartest man to ever play the game of baseball. I consider that. Ex-twin, as you might you might know, you've seen him play before.
By the way, let me just annoy all Angel fans real quick and say that the correct call on that play was made, and I will die on that hill.
Yeah, I agree too.
I'm just saying.
I agree. But anyway, to say the least, it's 8th inning or 9th inning. Sox score that run, and Bobby Jenks comes in, and we're still up 3-0, and I'm sitting there and my son at the time, he was an Astros fan. He turned the corner and became a Sox fan later, but he was an Angels fan, and he was an Astros fan. And I felt bad for him. I honestly did. I felt bad for him because we beat the Angels, and so then he loved. I'm trying to think. I can't remember. Oh, I'm trying to think of the third baseman. He loved. It wasn't Caminiti, but there was a third baseman. I can't remember the guy's name. He was on my fantasy team, and I can't remember the guy's name.
For the Astros?
I can't remember the guy's name. And there was this third baseman that he loved, and he was rooting for the Astros. He was rooting against us, but it's still, we went, and it was 1-0. Jenks gets the ground ball to Jose Uribe. Uribe picks it up, charges in, picks it up, throws the first to Konerko, and bedlam ensues in the household. We all go nuts, and then my son's sitting there bawling. I mean, like I say,
Dad's rubbing it in.
Yeah. Going crazy, calling my dad, calling, then I remember calling my grandmother, who's, I think, probably, she would have been 88 or something like that, and calling her, "Grandma, the Sox won." And she goes, "What?" She's living in Chicago. She didn't know anything about it at the time. I go, "The Sox what?" And so it was just a long suffering thing. I just remember that just being a long suffering. Of course, they haven't won it since then, but that was just a long suffering Sox fan. That had to be my number 3 moment.
Juan Uribe was with the Marlins in 03 too. He'd won 2 World Series in 2 years, or over the span of 3 seasons.
Yep.
Yeah, he was he was not the most slick fielding shortstop, but he could. But he could hit the ball exactly,
and he did.
I did Konerko at first, that Tadahito Iguchi at second, the second baseman from Japan, and Perzinski, the Contreras was a Cuban pitcher, and they had another Cuban pitcher too. I can't remember his name at the time, but it was just a weird kind of eclectic group. I mean, not Jermaine Dye, who I think was a series MVP. Scott Pasednik in center. It's just a weird kind of group, and Bobby Jenks. That's where he had his coming out party.
And sometimes that's what it takes is an oddball group to come together and get it done. There's no doubt.
But there was
I got a great betting story surrounding that World Series, real quick, if I may digress.
Yes.
We go to Las Vegas. It's me, my dad, and my stepmom at the time, and my stepmom was out there for business. We kind of just tagged along. I think we were coming home Sunday. Saturday, we go onto the floor. We go to the sports book. My stepmom's looking at all the odds for the World Series because it was the off season, and she looks at the White Sox and says, "Wow, those odds they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're throwing $20 on." Tells my dad, "Hey, go throw $20 on the White Sox while I'm at the convention today." Yeah, no problem. So we're leaving town Sunday, and we get about halfway home, and she goes, asks my dad, "Hey, did you throw the $20 on the White Sox?" And he goes, "Oh, I forgot."
Wow. What were they?
Oh, they won the World Series.
I know.
What were
the odds?
Yeah.
It was somewhere around 250 to 1.
Oh my goodness.
I think
wow.
at the time.
That's $5,000 right there.
Just about. Yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable.
He has not lived that down. No.
I wouldn't let him either.
Poor Jim.
For me, my third one is along the same lines as you, Chuck. Is years of terrible football, and then finally starting in '92, a little bit of a transformation for the Green Bay Packers to 1996 when they won Super Bowl 31 over the New England Patriots. And again, it started in '92 really when they hired Mike Holmgren to come in and coach. And kind of the interesting part of that is he had no head coaching experience coming into Green Bay. And just some years, 5 or 6 years prior to that, he was a high school teacher, and of course he had his time with San Francisco and learned a lot, and obviously the introduction of the West Coast offense into mainstream NFL football.
He was definitely a Bill Walsh disciple.
Yeah, no doubt. So. And obviously with the players that they had in Green Bay at the time, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what we went through as Packer fans prior to that was
I miss those years.
I know you do.
So does the Crow.
I mean, I'm sorry. Lynn Dickey and David Whitehurst and John Brockington and those names that just could never get it done. And it was just some dying years of Green Bay Packer football, which a lot of people today don't even realize that there were those years that it was just abysmal.
Chester Markle.
Just abysmal to even watch. But Packer fans are true blue. And kind of an interesting backstory with Mike Holmgren is, he'd been in Green Bay for about a month, and he happened to go down to the supermarket, and he ran into a little old lady who was obviously a Packer fan, and he was coming down the aisle, and he had his cart, and he'd turned to kind of miss her, and she veered over in front of him, and then he veered to the other side, and she veered over there, and their carts kind of clicked, and she looks at him and says, "You're the new coach, aren't you?" And he says, "Yes, ma'am, I am." He says, "All right, Cali boy, let's go kick some butt." And that's really kind of what started, the Green Bay Packer resurgence, and then going on into 1996. And we can never forget that, prior to the 96 season, well, first of all, in 95, they went to the NFC Championship against Dallas. But in that off season between 95 and 96, if you guys don't remember, Brett Favre put himself in treatment for painkillers. He was up to like 10 or 12 painkillers a day, and put himself into treatment, and then came out feeling good, and of course called his own shot and said, "We're winning the Super Bowl this year," in a press conference, and really put a lot of pressure on himself and his teammates to go out and win it. But if you take a look at all the players that they had at the time, Andre Rison, Antonio Freeman, Reggie White, you can never forget about Chris Jackie and what he did that year as a field goal kicker.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably the one that everybody seems to forget about that year is Desmond Howard, who was really had, after Washington, and then where was he after that? He was with the Jaguars, I think,
Somewhere
for a
there.
year, and then he gets
remember.
released, and the Packers pick him up, and they don't even know if he's going to be healthy enough. He's never been really healthy, all the way kind of through his whole process, and then him doing what he did that over the whole course of the year, to make it possible so they could get to a Super Bowl game. But again,
The rare Heisman Trophy winner to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, there is that curse, isn't it?
Yeah,
Anyway, so to me, the '96 Packers winning the Super Bowl 31, is one of the best things I've seen.
So we go now to number 2, huh?
Number 2,
Countdown continues.
Mr. Pesolano.
All right. My number 2 happened a few years after that World Cup final. This game I was in attendance for. This was the only one of my 3 that I was there for. And it was my first time ever at Dodger Stadium. And it was the 2009 World Baseball Classic Championship game. And it is the single best game I have ever seen in person in my life, in any sport. It didn't get better than this. It was Japan and South Korea. Now, you guys know me, and jeering for the opposition. I don't do that.
No.
I jeer my own team.
Yes.
Usually.
Exactly.
I don't
To
ever,
a detriment.
Yes,
I
exactly.
don't ever talk mess about anybody else's team to
Be
them.
up 18-0, and we're gonna lose.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know me.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
how
yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of talking mess to anybody else about their team, because I'm a huge believer in sports karma, and if I do that, I know my team's going to lose.
Yep.
They're going to let me down. This was my first experience in a stadium in which neither fan base had one bad thing to say about the other side. It was 10 innings, yes, 10 innings in this championship game, 10 innings of cheering for your country to win a World Baseball Classic, which was in its infancy, right? It was pretty much a brand new tournament. It was the second edition of the World Baseball Classic. I was at the stadium, Chuck, with our good buddy Rashawn Haylock.
Yep.
At the game with him, sitting up in the upper deck to where we could get into the stadium to watch this game. 3-1 in the 8th inning. South Korea's down. They tack on a run to make it 3-2. They get to the 9th. Japan brings in Yu Darvish in the 9th inning to try to close out this World Series, and he can't get it done. And Korea ties the game at 3. So they head to extra innings. And in the top of the, or it was the bottom of the 10th? Bottom of the 10th? I think it was a walk-off. I can't remember. It might have been they scored in the top of the 10th and then sealed it up in the bottom. I think that's how it was. Because they scored, that's right, because they scored twice in the top of the 10th. Ichiro drives in the game-winning run eventually for Japan. They win it 5-3. Ichiro goes 4 for 6 with 2 RBIs, and I think he knocked them both in the top of the 10th. Darvish stays in the game, comes in the bottom of the 10th, gets the 3 outs. He both gets a blown save and is the winning pitcher in the World Baseball Classic. The whole stadium is going nuts. The South Korea fans are still cheering and chanting for their team, even though they had just won a silver medal, in essence lost the gold medal. And that whole experience that day was just nothing but positivity throughout the whole stadium, which is something I'd never seen at a sporting event. If there was a bad call
Especially
on
at
the field,
Chavez Ravine.
you know, bad call on the field, bad ball strike call, nobody complained. It was just, oh, all right, we move on to the next. And for me, it was everything that we should be experiencing in a stadium. And Japan, by the way, the MVP of the entire World Baseball Classic that year was Daisuke Matsuzaka. There's the name from the past. He didn't even pitch in that championship game because he had pitched in the semifinals, I think. So we had just missed him.
Remember that one?
Yeah, right. And just a great baseball game all the way around. It was 3-1 for a long period of time, and not until the 10th did anybody score more than one run in any of the innings. So they put up those 2 in the 10th. That was the only multiple run inning, and it was just a pitcher's battle that whole game. Great experience for the franchise and I, getting to see Japan raise that trophy, and that is my number 2 moment.
Wow, that's I think international sports events are awesome. I don't have an international event. Well, I do.
Yes, you do.
We'll save that for later. Yeah, you do.
Anyway, but the point I want to make is that it just seems so much more heightened, the passion for international events, to represent your country, to cheer for your team, right? To have some national pride. I don't care where you're from. Mm-hmm. If your team is on the field, on the ice, on the court, wherever they are, you're going to cheer and you're going to have some passion along with it.
Yep. And that was the big thing that day, was just 2 fan bases cheering on their country. And if anything went wrong, oh well, we're going to still be here to support them.
Chuck.
Number 2, I was in college. I'm 21 years old. This is when I was into basketball. Big Bulls fan, being from Chicago. MJ, the Bulls finally come over the hump, and they beat the Pistons after 3 years of suffering. And what happens is, I talked to my dad, who's up in Northern California, and he says, see if we can get tickets, because they're playing the Lakers in the finals. He says, see if you can get tickets, or let's see what we can do to get tickets to see one of these final games. So we end up getting 4 tickets for Game 5, excuse me. Game 4. It's Game 4 of the finals, so we're assured of seeing one. And I end up going to Vegas for my first time, too, that weekend. So we drive back from Vegas that Sunday morning, and then my dad and my brothers come down. They fly down on a trip, or they fly down. I pick them up from LAX. We drive to the Fabulous Forum at the time, and we're sitting in he paid $400 a seat, and that, which is big time money at the time.
Back then, yeah, even more so, yeah.
And we were sitting in the Loge, which is the second level. We're sitting right in front of Scotty Williams' fan. I'm not sure if you guys remember Scotty Williams. Yeah. He was a backup center at the time. We were sitting behind Scotty Williams' family. They had the front row. We were sitting row B. And I'll tell you one thing. The game was on June 12th, I believe, 1991. And even though I didn't spend the money on the tickets, MJ went baseline. And then he went and he ended up going in for a dunk. And I kid you not, he stayed up in the air for what seemed like 15 seconds. I kid you not. Just the way he went baseline and just floated in the air. And you just, come on, let's dunk the ball. Come on. You could have ate a sandwich by the time he was done. And he dunked the ball. And I turned to my dad, and I go, that was well worth the money. He kind of looked at me and goes, oh, really?
Yeah. Thanks.
Yes.
But the Bulls ended up winning 97, I think, in 97-82. They won by 15. And then 3 days later, on June 15th, they end up getting their first NBA title. But I'll tell you what, that time, just seeing Jordan, that was the only time I ever saw Jordan in person, too. And just seeing him just do that going baseline, by far was just worth everything to me. And I forget how many points he had, but still, it was just amazing. And don't forget that Game 2, or that Game 3, where he did that reverse. I was actually in a casino in a sports book in Vegas where he did that reverse, where he switched hands in mid-flight and stuff. Yeah.
They use that in all the promo videos.
Yeah, exactly. Gatorade commercials and stuff like that, and just that was a game changer too. But the one thing I remember him going baseline, just the way he stayed up in the air, it seemed like forever. And once you see him in person, there's nothing else like it. And like I said, my only time I did it, and it was just well worth. Like I said, I never spent the money, but it was just well worth everything, just the trip and everything we had to go through to get there and stuff like that. And it was well worth it to me.
Anytime you get a chance to see one of your favorite players of all time
Exactly.
in person, and they perform and they do what they do, it's amazing. You know, of course.
The man ripped my heart out twice.
Well,
Yeah, that's true, huh?
as sports fans, when you watch in person, you really get to see how special these athletes are, and that to me is the real magic of all of it. I'm going to follow suit with you, Chuck, and I'm going to stay with basketball. And now, 1979 NCAA men's basketball championship. Prior to the only kind of thing that really kind of led into it a little bit, and I think it means more today to me than anything, and maybe not as much then, but Larry Bird being on the front of Sports Illustrated that year, and I was a huge Sports Illustrated fan, so I had watched along with that and knew that there was a collision course with him and Magic Johnson at Michigan State, and of course a Big Ten team, Michigan State, and had seen them play at Williams Arena and at the University of Minnesota, and to watch the championship game was on a Monday night. I remember vividly, and of course, I mean, I am a Larry Bird fan, and it all started there. But I am a Magic Johnson fan as well, and some of it had to do with that game, and some of it had to do with the development and growth of those two into their NBA careers, and then past that, which makes it even more special of that game as I look back upon it. Michigan State did win; they owned Indiana State. It was
I remember that
it was
too.
an awful game, but for Indiana State to go undefeated and to make it to that championship game in that season was quite a feat in itself. And obviously a lot of it rested on what Larry Bird did in, game out. He had some good players to go alongside of him, but nothing to the caliber of what he was,
Right.
or what Magic had and the caliber that he had alongside of him at Michigan State. There were some great players there. So impactful for me was definitely 1979 NCAA men's basketball game between Indiana State and Michigan State, and between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, with Michigan State and Magic Johnson and his crew coming out on top. A fun game to watch, heartbreaking, but really meant more to me as a sports fan as I grew older, and then watched the rivalry expand into the NBA.
I was going to say, it's too bad the two of them didn't do anything after college.
I was
huh?
going to say they
Yeah.
saved. I mean, they basically saved the NBA afterwards too.
And then obviously culminating with the Dream Team with them together. And then I hope the people are watching. If you haven't, all you got to do is go to YouTube and watch the documentary of Bird and Magic. Watch the interview on David Letterman with Bird and Magic. I mean, those two things are super special. If you're a basketball historian and enjoy the game during the 80s and 90s, you'll love those two YouTube videos. And just some of the backstory behind it, and how Larry was just such a loner and didn't want to talk to anybody. He didn't want to talk to Magic, and Magic, who's Mr. Personality,
Exactly.
just loves everybody and wants to be friends with everybody, and wanted so bad to be friends with Larry, but Larry was like, I'm not having any of this, because he knew Magic was an awesome basketball player, and if he gave him any edge, it just Larry had to find. And you can tell everybody, his athleticism wasn't great, but his brain was unbelievable for basketball.
I'll tell you what, I've been lucky enough to meet Magic Johnson one time, and you want to talk about personable. It was a room of 400 people, and he made sure if anybody wanted to talk to him, he would, and he met everybody in the room.
That's a real pro. That's a professional.
And one of the nicest people I've ever met. So that's awesome about that game. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see that one.
Okay.
With my own two eyes, I had to watch.
So
full
before
highlights.
we get to one, Do any of you guys have any honorable mentions that you might want to just make mention of shortly?
I think I already mentioned Cal State Fullerton 2004. That was my honorable mention. Basically, it was I was an alumni. It was the first championship that actually my school had won when I was an alumni or an active participant or a student of. So that was my one and done. So
I got a couple of honorable mentions. One for me. And it's funny how we go through these lists and we realize that it wasn't so much about what happened on the field as so much as how it made us feel about it.
Yes.
And our development going forward. But I've cried one time after watching a game, and my honorable mention is the 49ers and the Falcons in the NFC Championship game in 2012. Is the still one and only time I cried after a game ended, because just almost like your Packers story.
Yeah.
So bad for so long.
Yeah.
And
White Sox.
yeah, I
and
cried during the White
to
Sox.
finally get over that hump, and I was watching the game in my living room by myself. There was nobody else around. And when they knocked down that final pass from Matt Ryan at the end of the game, just the sigh of relief and everything coming out of you watching such a tense football game. That's an honorable mention for me. And then the other one isn't so much a moment as it is how lucky we have been. You guys have seen many, but for me, to watch two guys who ripped out my heart from the beginning of their career all the way until the end of their career, but to be able to watch their entire career from start to finish with Kobe Bryant and Derek Jeter are two guys who was just such a thrill, no matter how much I hated watching them win anything.
Yeah.
But to be able to watch two guys of their caliber from start to finish is very memorable for me.
For me, I have one honorable mention, and I was fortunate it was 1981, I'll tell you right now. 1981, it was a Sunday afternoon. My dad says, hey, get some, it was in the morning, or maybe we got back from church or something, and he says, hey, put some different clothes on. We're going. I'm like, well, where are we going? He says, we're going to a hockey game. And this was pretty rare for my dad, who was not a hockey fan. He played hockey, but he wasn't going to go to a North Stars hockey game unless I begged him to go or there was something serious going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what are we going to the game for? We get to the game. Starting lineup for the Hartford Whalers.
Oh, boy.
Was on left wing, Mark Howe, on right wing, Marty Howe, and at center, Gordie Howe.
Wow.
To be able to have seen that game, and of course, be able to have that in my memories. And Gordie was pretty late in his career, and his performance ability at that time was not great.
Wasn't he just shy of or at 50?
He was right around 50 at the time. I'm not exactly sure.
Chelios-esque.
Yeah, and but Chelios played high level for such a long time, and I'm not downgrading Gordie, but at 50 he would basically jump out on the ice for his shift, skate to the top of the circles at one end, skate to the top of the circles at the other end, make a big loop, and go back to the bench.
Take a bow.
Right, go back to the bench. And
helmet.
he every time he'd jump on the ice, my dad would give me a little elbow, so I was paying attention to watch, and really impactful part of my sports fan life. So here we go.
Those are honorable mentions. Those didn't even make the list.
Yeah. So here's to our number ones. I'm excited to talk about mine, and I know you guys are excited to talk about yours. Eric.
My number one, again, not my favorite team, but a team I do root for. I think you guys know I'm an Atlanta Braves fan through and through. This has to do with the other team that I support. Not my favorite team, but I'm from Boston. I was born there. My whole family's from there. Red Sox fans, Patriots fans, Bruins fans, Celtics fans, right? That's how it goes. I call them my secondary teams. I root for them off to the side. When they win nowadays, when they win championships, it's great.
Yeah.
But something here's missing.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the fact that it's not your favorite team that won.
Yep.
But when the Patriots won the first Super Bowl, there was screaming and cheering and going nuts in the living room when Vinatieri made the kick against the Rams. That was the same case for all of the Patriots' 6 Super Bowls. When the Celtics beat the Lakers in 2008, it was the same. It was screaming and cheering, even though they won that game by 39 points over the Lakers in Game 6. It was still, the Celtics finally did it in our lifetime. When the Bruins won the Cup and beat Vancouver in 2011, that was another jump up and scream and cheer and go nuts. And then you have 2004, when the Red Sox played the Cardinals in the World Series, and it was Game 4, of course. And fourth pitch of the game, Johnny Damon hits a home run. They go up 1-0. 2 innings later, Trot Nixon, there's a name from the past, hits a 2-run double to make it almost clear the bases. It was a 2-run double, and that made it 3-0. And that was it for the final 6 innings. It was a 3-0 game, much like the White Sox when they beat the Astros. So a 3-0 game, you go to the ninth, Keith Foulke comes onto the mound, and of course the famous line by Joe Buck. And Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions. As Foulke flips the ball to first to Doug Minkiewicz, who was playing first base in that 9th inning. Remember, he stole the ball.
Ex-Twin?
Yeah, another ex-White Sox.
Twin, not White Sox.
Twin, sorry, you're right. Yeah, Twin. And he stole the ball, and then there was that whole controversy after. But I was sitting on the couch. My dad was next to me. My brother was on the other side. And when that final out was made, not a word. Not a single word. 86 years.
Wow.
My dad worked for the organization for a while. My uncle worked there too. My cousin still works for the organization. I was at Game 1 of the ALDS. It's the only MLB playoff game I've ever been to. It was in Anaheim. Manny Ramirez hit a home run to cap it off that day. My cousin was at the clinching game, the final Game 2 of the World Series, because 3 and 4 were in St. Louis. So he was at the last home game for the Sox that season. I was at the first playoff game that season, and the curse was lifted. And the three of us sat on the couch and just said, I think I remember my dad going, I can't believe it. And that was it. No cheering, no nothing. Just stared and just watched them erase it. That's my number one memory.
That's pretty awesome.
Yep.
And obviously pretty impactful by the way you tell it. Pretty emotional.
I don't forget any of those games that year, too, in that playoff run for them.
Well, there's more to the story always than just the one game.
Yep.
You know, as I've gone through all this, thinking about it, it's not just the one game that you watched. It's the season leading up to it. It's maybe even a couple seasons prior to it. It's the seasons after, what happens after. So, yeah, I can see the emotion there.
That's why I had to stop talking.
Yeah. Charles.
Let's go back to June 6, 2007, basically. Kind of the premise what brought us all together, kind of, to tell you the truth. Ducks are up 3-1 against Ottawa Senators. Ottawa Senators. I'm sitting in row with my kids in section 423, row M, seats 4 through 7, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. And watching, sitting there, Ottawa scores a goal to make it 3-2. It was kind of nip and tuck, I think. And then Corey Perry scores a goal late in the third or mid-third, and then we end up getting an empty netter. And that's when bedlam ensues, and the Ducks capture the first Stanley Cup ever in the history of California. And basically just walking around the arena that night, the Honda Center, it was just magical. Honestly, it was, everybody loved everybody. It was just all the way around. I mean, just to be there and just feeling the excitement, and it was the first year where we became season ticket holders too, and it was just I mean, I could have sold the tickets for whatever. I could have had them easily for what I paid for playoffs, and I told them no.
Well, that was obviously a long time coming for California hockey fans. And for the majority of people that live outside of California, they don't realize how many hockey fans are here. Lots of transplants of people that have moved from other places, from hockey-rich traditional areas to California, that have become either, I'm sorry to say it, Kings or Ducks fans, or Sharks fans, or Golden Seals fans, or, you know, to go back to all the hockey history that's come through the state, and then for the Ducks to win. And the one thing that I always think about with that, Chuck, and maybe you can speak on it a little bit, is that the fans here were treated as such a special team with some really special players. I'm not sure many people really realize how good Scott Niedermayer was.
Oh yeah.
His skating, his toughness, his hockey vision, his leadership, and it's almost funny, right? Because we see him at the rink and it's like, oh, there's Scott.
Oh, hey, there's Scott. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this man is, in my estimation, one of the best defensemen to have played the game.
True.
He's got to be in the top
10
for sure, top 10. I was thinking 6, 5, 6, 7 category, somewhere in there. He's got to be in those conversations because of what he, if you're going to talk championships, you got to talk championships with him too.
Let's remember how he ripped out Ducks fans' hearts and then handed them back
exactly.
a few years later.
Yes, exactly. So, I don't know what you were feeling about that too, but you got Pronger as well.
Well, that's the whole thing. That's what prompted me to get the tickets. Basically, after the acquisition of Chris Pronger, that's where I said, okay, we're set now. After we acquired Pronger in that trade on I think it was July 3rd of 2002 or 2002. Or no, 2006. 2006. 2006 we acquired Pronger. That's where I said enough's enough. We're getting tickets this year. And basically that's when the kids were starting to develop. I mean, Perry and Getzloff had their were seasoned the year before when they lost to Edmonton in the conference finals to Pronger and the Oilers.
Yep.
Jiggy was obviously
getting jiggy with it.
Already set up at goaltender. I mean, we already had Niedermayer for the year already, but basically the acquisition of Pronger was okay, it's time. Let's do it. And that's where I got the tickets.
That worked out.
Yeah. That was a good investment.
Good heads up.
You got to make mention of the unsung hero of that team,
Sammy Paulson.
Sammy Paulson.
Yes, Sammy Paulson. Yeah.
What he did.
Did we get him in a trade for Fedorov? And we're going, who wasn't he? Didn't we get him from the Blue Jackets?
I'm not even sure how he got here, but he got here and was instrumental in that whole process. So.
Yeah. He was great. I thought he was pretty close to. He was a close runner-up for the Conn Smythe. I thought from Niedermayer. He was awesome. He was awesome in that whole playoff run.
All right, Iceman.
All right, so my number one is actually, so I'm gonna say it as a game, but it holds so much more than just that. So obviously, if anybody knows me, they know that the 1980 Olympic team at Lake Placid was really kind of instrumental in my hockey development, growth, and continuation with hockey into the future from that date. But that game against the Russians, the interesting backstory on this is that that night, I was 10 years old, and I had a younger brother and sister, so Mom and Dad had the neighbor come over, was going to watch us, and they were going out for dinner that night. And we had heard on the radio that the Americans had won. Because if people don't realize is that the game was tape delayed.
Yeah,
it didn't see until later.
We were Central Time. That's going on Eastern Standard Time, and so hearing on the radio that the Americans won was, I couldn't believe it because we had understood that, just a week or two prior, the U.S. team had lost to those same Russians at Madison Square Garden 10-2.
Yeah, something like
10-2 or something like that. But we had also known what the Russians had done against the NHL All-Stars and what they had done in the prior years and how many gold medals they had won prior to that. And then the 72 Summit Series with Canada.
Yep.
So all those stories we had known and how good they were and how good those top players were and how fast they were and quite frankly, it was men playing against boys.
True.
All these players for the U.S. Olympic team, I grew up watching Neil Broughton, Steve Kristoff, all the Minnesota guys that Phil Verkota, John Baugh Harrington, all those guys I grew up watching, and Butsy Erickson, Davy Christian. I had
Did you say
watched
Neil
play.
Broughton already?
Yeah,
What's
oh,
the name?
yeah. Number 9 on an Olympic team. Number 7 with the
9?
North Stars.
Number 9.
Anyway, just watching those players come up. I mean, I watched Neil Broughton and Butsy Erickson play in the 1977 Minnesota State High School Hockey Championship. And I watched Neil Broughton in 1978-79 at the University of Minnesota as a freshman, playing against North Dakota. So I knew exactly what these guys all were. And then to go against this Russian team that was, scary. And they were fast and they were quick and they played as a team. And for them to win that game, it was unbelievable. So when I had heard that the Americans had won, I was like, no way. So we were waiting for the tape delay to come on, and I watched on pins and needles the whole game, thinking that the floor was going to fall out from underneath me, right? That somebody lied on the radio, and just couldn't believe it. So, and then ultimately the impact that game and that team specifically and those players specifically had on my life moving forward really was a catalyst in all my hockey moving forward. And I think a lot of players of that era can say the same thing for that. But for me and my opportunity to talk on the wavelengths here that was a huge moment for me in my life.
And it wasn't just about hockey.
No, yeah,
that's what made that thing.
Yeah.
The Cold War, and then
Exactly.
then obviously
the Russians were human.
We had captives in Iran at the time, so there was a lot of that international stuff going on behind the scenes. At one point, we didn't even know if the Russians were coming to play on U.S. soil.
Yeah.
We were boycotting the Summer Olympics
In Moscow.
in Moscow. So with all that kind of in the backstory, that game, you're right, it was so much more. But for me, at that age, I see the impact now and what it was. But at that point, to me, it was a hockey game, and it was hockey players that I grew up loving and emulating and wanting to be like, and then ultimately causing me to try to be the best player that I could become, and then ultimately into my coaching career.
I was the same age. I remember exactly where I was. We were practicing baseball because the baseball tryouts had just finished. So we were on Woodsboro or East Woodsboro Street playing baseball, and my mom had just come out and said that we'd beaten the Russians. We came out of the house and because she heard it on the news and said we beat the Russians. We traded in our bats and balls. And we went out and we went in the garage and got the hockey sticks and started playing hockey.
So for that time period for me and its impact on where I am here today, I can't say enough about it. Those players were my heroes. I had grew up around Herb Brooks to a certain extent. Didn't know him personally, but had some cross interactions. So he was always the scary coach guy. And we'd see him. That's Herb Brooks, right? So for us, it was a pretty magical moment. And of course, when you're that age, sports can actually be magical. And to me, that's, as a sports fan, that is the important piece in all this. And I hope you guys feel it as well.
No. Well, you cannot forget the goaltending antics of Jim Craig either. We never forgot to mention.
Obviously, Jimmy Craig, a huge part of it. But I just wanted to mention that the fun parts are the ages when you're so young and enjoying sports and really growing to love whatever sport that you love. So if you like this show, come check us out on our social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also go to our website, www.cihmedia.com. CIH-media.com.
The dash gets us every time.
-media.com, and come check out our stuff. Love to have you. And so for the show, again, my name is Mike Perkins. My partners here today, Chuck Laser Lasik and Eric Pesolano. You've been watching CIH Media and Coming In Hot.